Library of Souls by Ransom Riggs. Chapter 1. The monster stood not a tongue's length away, eyes fixed on our throats, shriveled brain crowded with fantasies of murder. Its hunger for us charged the air. Hollows are born lusting after the souls of peculiars, and here we were arrayed before it like a buffet. Bite-sized Addison, bravely standing his ground at my feet, tail at attention. Emma moored against me for support, still too dazed from the impact to make more than a match flame. Our backs laddered against the wrecked phone booth. Beyond our grim circle, the underground station looked like the aftermath of a nightclub bombing. Steam from burst pipes shrieked forth in ghostly curtains. Splintered monitors swung broken-necked from the ceiling. A sea of shattered glass spread all the way to the tracks, flashing in the hysterical strobe of red emergency lights, like an acre-wide disco ball. We were boxed in, a wall hard to one side and glass shin-deep on the other, 2 strides from a creature whose only natural instinct was to disassemble us. And yet, it made no move to close the gap. It seemed rooted to the floor, swaying on its heels like a drunk or a sleepwalker. Death's head drooping, its tongues a nest of snakes I'd charmed to sleep. Me. I'd done that. Jacob Portman. Boy, nothing from nowhere, Florida. It was not currently murdering us. This horror made of gathered dark and nightmares, harvested from sleeping children, because I had asked it not to. Told it in no uncertain terms to unwrap its tongue from around my neck. Back off, I'd said. Stand, I'd said, in a language made of sounds I hadn't known a human mouth could make. And miraculously, it had, eyes challenging me, while its body obeyed. Somehow, I had tamed the nightmare, cast a spell over it. But sleeping things wake, and spells wear off, especially those cast by accident. And beneath its placid surface, I could feel the hollow boiling. Addison nudged my calf with his nose. More wights will be coming. Will the beasts let us pass? Talk to it again, Emma said, her voice woozy and vague. Tell it to sod off. I searched for the words, but they'd gotten shy. I don't know how. You did a minute ago, Addison said. It sounded like there was a demon inside you. A minute ago, before I'd known I could do it, the words had been right there on my tongue, just waiting to be spoken. Now that I wanted them back, it was like trying to catch fish with bare hands. Every time I touched one, it slipped out of my grasp. Go away, I shouted. The words came in English. The hollow didn't move. I stiffened my back, glared into its inkpot eyes, and tried again. Get out of here. Leave us alone. English again. The hollow tilted its head like a curious dog, but was otherwise a statue. Is he gone? Addison asked. The others couldn't tell for sure. Only I could see it. Still there, I said. I don't know what's wrong. I felt silly and deflated. Had my gift vanished so quickly? Never mind, Emma said. Hollows aren't meant to be reasoned with anyway. She stuck out a hand and tried to light a flame, but it fizzled. The effort seemed to sap her. I tightened my grip around her waist, lest she topple over. Save your strength, Matchstick, said Addison. I'm sure we'll need it. I'll fight with cold hands if I have to, said Emma. All that matters is we find the others before it's too late. The others. I could see them still, their after-image fading by the tracks. Horace's fine clothes a mess. Bronwyn's strength no match for the wights' guns. Enoch dizzy from the blast. Hugh using the chaos to pull off Olive's heavy shoes and float her away. Olive caught by the heel and yanked down before she could rise out of reach. all of them weeping in terror, kicked onto the train at gunpoint. Gone. Gone with the ymbryne we'd nearly killed ourselves to find, hurtling now through London's guts toward a fate worse than death. Already too late, I thought. It was too late the moment Call's soldiers stormed Miss Wren's frozen hideout. It was too late the night we took Miss Peregrine's wicked brother for our beloved ymbryne. But I swore to myself that we'd find our friends and our ymbryne, no matter the cost, even if there were only bodies to recover, even if it meant adding our own to the pile. So, then, somewhere in the flashing dark was an escape to the street. A door, a staircase, an escalator, way off against the far wall. But how to reach them? "Get the hell out of our way," I shouted at the hollow, giving it one last try. English, naturally. The hollow grunted like a cow but didn't move. It was no use. The words were gone. "Plan B," I said. "It won't listen to me, so we go around it. Hope it stays put." "Go around it where?" said Emma. "To give it a wide berth, we'd have to wade through heaps of glass, but the shards would slice Emma's bare calves and Addison's paws to ribbons." I considered alternatives. I could carry the dog, but that still left Emma. I could find a sword-like piece of glass and stab the thing in the eye, a technique that had served me well in the past. But if I couldn't manage to kill it with the first strike, it would surely snap awake and kill us instead. The only other way around it was through a small, glass-free gap between the hollow and the wall. It was narrow, though, a foot, maybe a foot and a half wide. A tight squeeze, even if we flattened our backs to the wall. I worried that getting so close to the hollow, or worse, touching it by accident, would break the fragile trance holding it in check. Short of growing wings and flying over its head, though, it seemed like our only option. "Can you walk a little?" I asked Emma. "Or at least hobble?" She locked her knees and loosened her grip on my waist, testing her weight. "I can limp." "Then here's what we're going to do. Slide past it, backs to the wall, through that gap there. It's not a lot of space, but if we're careful..." Addison saw what I meant and shrank back into the phone booth. "Do you think we should get so close to it?" "Probably not. What if it wakes up while we're..." "It won't," I said, faking confidence. "Just don't make any sudden moves, and whatever you do, don't touch it." "You're our eyes now," Addison said. "Bird preserve us." I chose a nice long shard from the floor and slid it into my pocket. Shuffling 2 steps to the wall, we pressed our backs to the cold tiles and began inching toward the hollow. Its eyes moved as we did, locked on me. A few creeping side steps later, and we were enveloped by a pocket of hollow stink so foul it made my eyes water. Addison coughed and Emma cupped a hand over her nose. "Just a little farther," I said, my voice reedy with forced calm. I took the glass from my pocket, gripping it with the pointed end out, then took another step, and another. We were close enough now that I could have touched the hollow with an outstretched arm. I heard its heart knocking inside of its ribs, the beat quickening with each step we took. It was straining against me, fighting with every neuron to wrest my clumsy hands from its controls. "Don't move," I said, mouthing the words in English. "You're mine. I control you. Don't move." I sucked in my chest, lined up and laddered each vertebra against the wall, then crabbed walk into the tight gap between the wall and the hollow. "Don't move. Don't move." Slide, shuffle, slide. I held my breath while the hollows quickened, wet and wheezing, a vile black mist blooming from its nostrils. The urge to devour us must have been excruciating. So was my urge to run, but I ignored it. That would have been acting like prey, not master. Don't move. Do not move. Another few steps, a few more feet, and we'd be past it. Its shoulder a hair's breadth away from my chest. Don't. And then it did. In one swift motion, the hollow swiveled its head and pivoted its body to face me. I went rigid. Don't move, I said, this time aloud to the others. Addison buried his face between his paws and Emma froze, her arms squeezing mine like a vice. I steeled myself for what was to come. Its tongues, its teeth, the end. Get back. Get back. Get back. English, English, English. Seconds passed, during which, astonishingly, we weren't killed. But for the rising and falling of its chest, the creature seemingly had turned once again to stone. Experimentally, moving by millimeters, I slid along the wall. The hollow followed me with slight turns of its head, locked onto me like a compass needle, its body in perfect sympathy with mine. But it didn't follow, didn't open its jaws. If whatever spell I'd cast had been broken, we'd already be dead. The hollow was only watching me, awaiting instructions I didn't know how to give. False alarm, I said, and Emma breathed an audible sigh of relief. We slid out of the gap, peeled ourselves from the wall, and hurried away as fast as Emma could limp. When we put a little distance between us and the hollow, I looked back. It had turned all the way around to face me. Stay, I muttered in English. Good. We passed through a veil of steam, and the escalator came into view, frozen into stairs, its power cut. Around it glowed a halo of weak daylight, a tantalizing envoy from the world above, world of the living, world of now, a world where I had parents. They were here, both of them, in London, breathing this air, a stroll away. Oh, hi there. Unthinkable. Still more unthinkable. Not 5 minutes ago, I'd told my father everything. The Cliffsnows virgin, anyway. I'm like Grandpa Portman was. I'm peculiar. They wouldn't understand, but at least now they knew. It would make my absence feel less like a betrayal. I could still hear my father's voice, begging me to come home. And as we limped toward the light, I had to fight a sudden, shameful urge to shake off Emma's arm and run for it, to escape this suffocating dark, to find my parents and beg forgiveness, and then to crawl into their posh hotel bed and sleep. That was most unthinkable of all. I could never. I loved Emma, and I'd told her so, and I wouldn't leave her behind for anything. And not because I was noble or brave or chivalrous. I'm not any of those things. I was afraid that leaving her behind would rip me in half. And the others, our poor doomed friends. We had to go after them. But how? A train hadn't entered the station since the one that spirited them away. And after the blast and gunshots that had rocked the place, I was sure there'd be no more coming. That left us 2 options, each one terrible. Go after them on foot through the tunnels and hope we didn't meet any more hollows, or climb the escalator and face whatever was waiting for us up there, most likely a white mop-up crew. Then regroup, reassess. I knew which option I preferred. I'd had enough of the dark and more than enough of hollows. Let's go up, I said, urging Emma toward the stalled escalator. We'll find somewhere safe to plan our next move while you get your strength back. Absolutely not, she said. We can't just abandon the others. Never mind how I feel. We aren't, but we need to be realistic. We're hurt and defenseless, and the others are probably miles away by now, out of the underground and halfway to somewhere else. How will we even find them? The same way I found you, said Addison, with my nose. Peculiar folk have an aroma all their own, you see, one which only dogs of my persuasion can sniff out. And you happen to be one powerfully odoriferous group of peculiars. Fear enhances it, I think, and skipping baths. Then we go after them, Emma said. She pulled me toward the tracks with a surprising burst of strength. I resisted, tug-of-warring our linked arms. No, there's no way the trains are still running. And if we go in there on foot, I don't care if it's dangerous, I won't leave them. It isn't just dangerous, it's pointless. They're already gone, Emma. She took her arm back and started hobbling toward the tracks. Stumbled, caught herself. Say something, I mouthed to Addison, and he circled around to block her. I'm afraid he's right. If we follow on foot, our friend's scent trail will have dissipated long before we're able to find them. Even my profound abilities have limits. Emma gazed into the tunnel, then back at me, her expression tortured. I held out my hand. Please, let's go. It doesn't mean we're giving up. All right, she said heavily. All right. But just as we were starting toward the escalator, someone called out from the dark, back along the tracks. Over here! The voice was weak, but familiar, the accent Russian. It was the folding man. Peering into the dark, I could just make out his crumpled form by the tracks, one arm raised. He'd been shot during the melee, and I assumed the wights had shoved him onto the train with the others. But there he lay, waving to us. Sergei! Cried Emma. You know him? Addison said suspiciously. He was one of Miss Wren's peculiar refugees, I said, my ears pricking at the wail of distant sirens echoing down from the surface. Trouble was coming, maybe trouble disguised as help, and I worried that our best chance at a clean exit was slipping away. Then again, we couldn't just leave him. Addison scuttled toward the man, dodging the deepest reefs of glass. Emma let me take her arm again, and we shuffled after. Sergei was lying on his side, covered in glass and streaked with blood. The bullet had hit him somewhere vital. His wireframe spectacles were cracked, and he was adjusting them, trying to get a good look at me. Is miracle, he rasped, his voice thin as twice-strained tea. I heard you speak with monster tongue. Is miracle. It's not, I said, kneeling beside him. It's gone, I've already lost it. If gift inside you is forever. Footsteps and voices echoed from the escalator passage. I cleared away glass so I could get my hands under the folding man. We're taking you with us, I said. Leave me, he croaked. I'll be gone soon enough. Ignoring him, I slipped my hands beneath his body and lifted. He was ladder-long, but light as a feather, and I held him in my arms like a big baby, his skinny legs dangling over my elbow, while his head lolled against my shoulder. 2 figures banged down the last few escalator steps, and then stood at the bottom, rimmed by pale daylight and peering into the new dark. Emma pointed at the floor, and we sank quietly to our knees, hoping they'd miss us, hoping they were just civilians coming to catch a train. But then I heard the squelch of a walkie-talkie, and they each fired up a flashlight, the beams shining against their bright reflective jackets. They might have been emergency responders, or wights disguised as such. I wasn't sure until, in synchrony, they peeled off wraparound sunglasses. Of course. Our options had just narrowed by half. Now there were only the tracks, the tunnels, We could never outrun them, damaged as we were. But escape was still possible if they didn't see us. And they hadn't yet, amidst the chaos of the ruined station. Their searchlights dueled across the floor. Emma and I backed toward the tracks. If we could just slip into the tunnels unnoticed. But Addison, damn him, wasn't moving. "Come on," I hissed. "They are ambulance drivers, and this man needs help," he said too loudly. And right away, the beams of light bounced up from the floor and whipped towards us. "Stay where you are," one of the men boomed, unholstering a gun while the other fumbled for his walkie-talkie. Then, two unexpected things happened in quick succession. The first was that, just as I was about to drop the folding man onto the tracks and dive after him with Emma, a thunderous horn blew from inside the tunnel, and a single brilliant headlight flashed into view. The rush of stale wind belonged, of course, to a train, running again, somehow, despite the blast. The second thing, announced by a painful twinge in my gut, was that the hollow had come unstuck and was loping in our direction. The instant after I felt it, I saw it too, plowing at us through a billow of steam, black lips peeled wide, tongues thrashing the air. We were trapped. If we ran for the stairs, we'd be shot and mauled. If we jumped onto the tracks, we'd be crushed by the train. And we couldn't escape onto the train because it would be 10 seconds at least before it stopped, and 12 before the doors opened, and 10 more before they shut again, and by then we'd be dead 3 ways. And so I did as I often do when I'm out of ideas. I looked to Emma. I could read in the desperation on her face that she understood the hopelessness of our situation, and in the stony set of her jaw that she meant to act anyway. I remembered only as she began to stagger forward, palms out, that she couldn't see the hollow, and I tried to tell her, reach for her, stop her, but I couldn't get the words out, and couldn't grab her without dropping the folding man. And then Addison was alongside her, barking at the wight, while Emma tried uselessly to make a flame. Spark. Spark. Nothing. Like a lighter low on juice. The wight broke out laughing, pulled back the hammer of his gun, and aimed it at her. The hollow gas ran at me, howling in counterpoint to the squeal of train brakes behind me. That's when I knew the end had come, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. At that moment, something inside me relaxed, and as it did, the pain I felt whenever a hollow was near faded too. That pain was like a high-pitched whine, and as it hushed, I discovered hidden beneath it another sound, a murmur at the edge of consciousness. A word. I dove for it, wrapped both arms around it, wound up and shouted it with all the force of a major league pitcher. "Him," I said, in a language not my own. It was only one syllable, but held volumes of meaning. And the moment it rattled from my throat, the result was instant. The hollow stopped running at me, stopped dead, skidding on its feet, then turned sharply to one side, and lashed out a tongue that whipped across the platform and wrapped 3 times around the wight's leg. Knocked off balance, he fired a shot that caromed off the ceiling, and then he was flipped upside down and hauled thrashing and screaming into the air. It took my friends a moment to realize what had happened. While they stood gaping and the other wight shouted into his walkie-talkie, I heard train doors whoosh open behind me. Here was our moment. "Come on," I shouted. And as they did, Emma stumble-running and Addison tangling her feet, and me trying to wedge the ganglion, blood-slick folding man through the narrow doors until we all crashed together across the threshold into the train car. More gunshots rang out, the wight firing blindly at the hollow. The doors closed halfway, then popped back open. "Clear the doors, please," came a cheerful pre-recorded announcement. "His feet," Emma said, pointing at the shoes at the end of the folding man's long legs, the toes of which were poking through the doors. I scrambled to kick his feet clear, and in the interminable seconds before the doors closed again, the dangling wight fired more wild shots until the hollow grew tired of him and flung him against the wall, where he slid to the floor in an unmoving heap. The other wight scurried for the exit. Him too, I tried to say, but it was too little too late. The doors were closing, and with an awkward jolt, the train began to move. I looked around, grateful that the car we'd tumbled into was empty. What would regular people make of us? "Are you okay?" I asked Emma. She was sitting up, breathing hard, studying me intensely. "Thanks to you," she said. "Did you really make the hollow do all that?" "I think so," I said, not quite believing it myself. "That's amazing," she said quietly. I couldn't tell if she was frightened or impressed, or both. "We owe you our lives," said Addison, nuzzling his head sweetly against my arm. "You're a very special boy." The folding man laughed, and I looked down to see him grinning at me through a mask of pain. "You see," he said, "I told you. Is miracle." Then his face turned serious. He grabbed my hand and pressed a small square of paper into it. A photograph. "My wife, my child," he said, "taken by our enemy long ago. If you find others, perhaps." I glanced at the photo and got a shock. It was a wallet-sized portrait of a woman holding a baby. Sergei had clearly been carrying it with him a long time. Though the people in the photo were pleasant enough, the photo itself, or the negative, had been seriously damaged, perhaps narrowly survived a fire, exposed to such heat that the faces were warped and fragmented. Sergei had never mentioned his family before now. All he'd talked about since we met him was raising an army of peculiars, going loop to recruit able-bodied survivors of the raids and purges. He never told us what he wanted an army for. To get them back. "We'll find them too," I said. We both knew this was far-fetched, but it was what he needed to hear. "Thank you," he said, and relaxed into a spreading pool of blood. "He doesn't have long," Addison said, moving to lick Sergei's face. "I might have enough heat to cauterize the wound," said Emma. Scooting toward him, she began rubbing her hands together. Addison nosed the folding man's shirt near his abdomen. "Here. He's hurt here." Emma put her hands on either side of the spot, and at the sizzle of flesh I stood up, feeling faint. I looked out the window. We were still pulling out of the station, slowed perhaps by debris on the tracks. The emergency light's SOS flicker picked details from the dark at random. The body of a dead wight, half buried in glass. The crumpled phone booth, scene of my breakthrough. The hollow, I registered its form with a shock, trotting on the platform alongside us, a few cars back, casual as a jogger. "Stop. Stay away," I spat at the window in English. My head wasn't clear, the hurt and the wine getting in the way again. We picked up speed and passed into the tunnel. I pressed my face to the glass, angling backward for another glimpse. It was dark. Dark. And then, in a burst of light like a camera flash, I saw the hollow as a momentary still image, flying, its feet lifting from the platform, tongues lassoing the rail of the last car. Miracle? Curse? I hadn't quite worked out the difference. I took his legs and Emma his arms, and gently we lifted Sergei onto a long bench seat, where beneath an advertisement for bake-at-home pizza, he lay blacked out and rocking with the motion of the train. If he was going to die, it seemed wrong that he should have to do so on the floor. Emma pulled up his thin shirt. "The bleeding stopped," she reported, "but he'll die if he doesn't see the inside of a hospital soon." "He may die anyway," said Addison, "especially in a hospital here in the present. Imagine, he wakes up in 3 days' time, side healed but everything else failing, aged 200 and bird knows what." "That may be," Emma replied. "Then again, I'll be surprised if in 3 days' time any of us are alive, in any condition whatsoever. I'm not sure what more we can do for him." I'd heard them mention this deadline before. 2 or 3 days was the longest any peculiar who'd lived in a loop could stay in the present without aging forward. It was long enough for them to visit the present but never to stay. Long enough to travel between loops, but short enough that they were never tempted to linger. Only daredevils and ymbrynes made excursions into the present longer than a few hours. The consequences of a delay were too grave. Emma rose, looking sickly in the pale yellow light, then tottered on her feet and grabbed for one of the train's stanchions. I took her hand and made her sit next to me, and she slumped against my side, exhausted beyond measure. We both were. I hadn't slept properly in days, hadn't eaten properly either, aside from the few opportunities we'd had to gorge ourselves like pigs. I'd been running and terrified and wearing these damned blister-making shoes since I couldn't remember when. But more than that, every time I spoke hollow, it seemed to carve something out of me that I didn't know how to put back. It made me feel tired to a degree that was wholly new, absolutely subterranean. I discovered a fresh vein inside me, a new source of power to mine, but it was depletable and finite, and I wondered if by using it up, I was using myself up too. I'd worry about that another time. For now, I tried to savor a rare moment of peace, my arm around Emma and her head on my shoulder, just breathing. Selfishly, perhaps, I didn't mention the hollow that had chased our train. What could any of us do about it? It would either catch us or not, kill us or not. The next time it found us, and I was sure there would be a next time, I would either find the words to stay its tongues, or I wouldn't. I watched Addison hop onto the seat across from us, unlock a window with his paw, and crack it open. The angry sound of the train and a warm funk of tunnel air came rushing in, and he sat reading it with his nose, eyes bright and snout twitching. The air smelled like stale sweat and dry rot to me, but he seemed to catch something subtler, something that required careful interpretation. "Can you smell them?" I asked. The dog heard me but took a long moment to reply, his eyes aimed at the ceiling as if finishing a thought. "I can," he said. "Their trail is nice and crisp, too." Even at this high speed, he could pick up the minutes-old traces of peculiars who'd been enclosed in an earlier train car. I was impressed, and told him so. "Thank you, but I can't take all the credit," he said. "Someone must have pushed open a window in their car, too. Otherwise, the trail would be much fainter. Perhaps Miss Wren did it, knowing I would try to follow." "She knew you were here?" I asked. "How did you find us?" Emma said. "Just a moment," Addison said sharply. The train was slowing into a station, the windows flashing from tunnel black to tile white. He stuck his nose out the window and closed his eyes, lost in concentration. "I don't think they got off here, but be ready in any case." Emma and I stood, doing our best to shield the folding man from view. I saw with some relief that there weren't many people waiting on the platform. Funny there were any at all, or that trains were still running. It was as if nothing had happened. The wights had made sure of it, I suspected, in hopes we'd take the bait, jump onto a train, and make it simple for them to round us up. We certainly wouldn't be hard to spot amongst modern London's workday commuters. Look casual, I said, like you belong here. This seemed to strike Emma as funny, and she stifled a laugh. It was funny, I guess, inasmuch as we belonged nowhere in particular, least of all here. The train stopped and the doors slid open. Addison sniffed the air deeply as a bookish woman in a peacoat stepped into our car. Seeing us, her mouth fell open, and then she turned smartly and walked out again. Nope, no thanks. I couldn't blame her. We were filthy, freakish-looking in bizarre old clothes and splashed with blood. We probably looked like we'd just killed the poor man beside us. Look casual, Emma said and snorted. Addison withdrew his nose from the window. We're on the right track, he said. Miss Wren and the others definitely passed this way. They didn't get off here? I asked. I don't think so. But if I don't smell them in the next station, we'll know we've gone too far. The doors smacked close, and with an electric whine, we were off again. I was about to suggest we find a change of clothes when Emma jolted beside me, as if she just remembered something. Addison, she said, what happened to Fiona and Claire? At the mention of their names, a nauseating new wave of worry shot through me. We'd last seen them at Miss Wren's menagerie, where the elder girl had stayed behind with Claire, who was too ill to travel. Call told us he'd raided the menagerie and captured the girls, but he also told us Addison was dead, so clearly his information couldn't be trusted. Ah, said Addison, nodding gravely. It's bad news, I'm afraid. Part of me, I admit, was hoping you wouldn't ask. Emma's face drained of color. Tell us. Of course, he said. Shortly after your party left, we were raided by a gang of wights. We threw Armageddon eggs at them, then scattered and hid. The larger girl with the unkempt hair. Fiona, I said, heart thudding. She used her facility with plants to hide us, in trees and under new-grown bushes. We were so well camouflaged that it would have taken days for the wights to root us all out, but they gassed us and drove us out into the open. Gas, Emma cried. The bastards swore they'd never use it again. It appears they lied, said Addison. I had seen a photo once in one of Miss Peregrine's albums of such an attack. Wights in ghostly masks, with breathing canisters, standing around casually as they launched clouds of poison gas into the air. Although the stuff wasn't fatal, it made your lungs and throat burn, caused terrible pain, and was rumored to trap ymbrynes in their bird form. When they'd rounded us up, Addison went on, we were interrogated as to the whereabouts of Miss Wren. They turned her tower inside out, searching for maps, diaries, I don't know what. And when poor Deirdre tried to stop them, they shot her. The emu raft's long face flashed before me, gawky, gap-toothed, and sweet, and my stomach lurched. What kind of person could kill such a creature? God, that's awful, I said. Awful, Emma agreed perfunctorily. And the girls? The small one was captured by the wights, Addison said. And the other, well, there was a scuffle with some of the soldiers, and they were near the cliff's edge, and she fell. I blinked at him. What? For a moment, the world blurred, then snapped back into focus. Emma stiffened, but her face betrayed nothing. What do you mean, fell? Fell how far? It was a sheer drop, 1,000 feet at least. His fleshy jowls drooped. I'm so sorry. I sat down heavily. Emma kept standing, her hands white-knuckling the rail. No, she said firmly. No, that can't be. Perhaps she grabbed onto something on the way down, a branch or a ledge. Addison studied the gum-spackled floor. It's possible. Or the trees below cushioned her fall and caught her like a net. She can speak to them, you know. Yes, he said. One can always hope. I tried to imagine being cushioned by a spiky pine tree after such a fall. It didn't seem possible. I saw the small hope Emma had kindled wink out, and then her legs began to tremble, and she let go of the rail and thumped down onto the seat beside me. She looked at Addison with wet eyes. I'm sorry about your friend. He nodded. Same to you. None of this ever would have happened if Miss Peregrine were here, she whispered. And then quietly, she bowed her head and began to cry. I wanted to put my arms around her, but somehow it felt like I'd be intruding on a private moment, claiming it for myself when really it was hers alone. So instead, I sat and looked at my hands and let her mourn her lost friend. Addison turned away, out of respect, I think, and because the train was slowing into another station. The doors opened. Addison stuck his head out the window, sniffed the air on the platform, growled at someone who tried to enter our car, then came back inside. By the time the doors closed again, Emma had lifted her head and wiped away her tears. I squeezed her hand. Are you all right? I said, wishing I could think of something more or better to say than that. I have to be, don't I? She said, for the ones who are still alive. To some, it might have seemed callous, the way she boxed up her pain and set it aside, but I knew her well enough now to understand. She had the heart the size of France, and the lucky few whom she loved with it were loved with every square inch. But its size made it dangerous, too. If she let it feel everything, she'd be wrecked. So she had to tame it, shush it, shut it up. Float the worst pains off to an island that was quickly filling with them, where she would go to live one day. Go on, she said to Addison. What happened to Claire? The wights marched off with her, gagged her 2 mouths and tossed her into a sack. But she was alive, I said, and biting as of noon yesterday. Then we buried Deirdre in our little cemetery, and I hightailed it for London to find Miss Wren and warn all of you. One of Miss Wren's pigeons led me to her hideaway, and while I was pleased to see that you had arrived before me, unfortunately so had the wights. Their siege had already begun, and I was forced to watch helplessly as they stormed the building, and, well, you know the rest. I followed as you were led away to the underground. When that blast went off, I saw an opportunity to aid you, and took it. Thank you for that, I said, realizing we hadn't yet acknowledged the debt we owed him. If you hadn't dragged us away when you did. Yes, well, no need to dwell on hypothetical unpleasantries, he said. But in return for my gallantry, I was rather hoping you would assist me in rescuing Miss Wren from the wights, as unlikely as that sounds. She means everything to me, you see. It was Miss Wren he'd wanted to snatch away from the wights, not us, but we were the realistic save, farther from the train, and he'd made a snap decision and taken what he could get. Of course we'll help, I said. Isn't that what we're doing now? Yes, he said, but you must realize, as an ymbryne, Miss Wren is more valuable to the wights than peculiar children, and thus she may prove more difficult to free. I worry that if by some miracle we are lucky enough to rescue your friends. Now wait a second, I snapped. Who says she's more... No, it's true, Emma said. She'll be under heavier lock and key, no question. But we won't leave her behind. We're not leaving anyone else behind ever again. You have our word as peculiars. The dog seemed satisfied with that. "Thank you," he said, and then his ears flattened. He hopped up onto the seat to look out the window as we pulled into the next station. "Hide yourselves," he said, ducking down. "There are enemies near." The wights were expecting us. I glimpsed 2 of them waiting on the platform, dressed as police officers among a scattering of commuters. They were scanning the cars as our train pulled into the station. We dropped down below the windows, hoping they'd miss us, but I knew they wouldn't. The one with the walkie-talkie had radioed ahead. They must have known we were on this train. Now all they had to do was search it. It came to a stop, and people began filing on board, though not into our car. I risked a peek through the open doors and saw one of the wights down the platform, speed-walking in our direction as he eyeballed each car. "One's coming this way," I muttered. "How's your fire, Em?" "Running on empty," she replied. He was getting close. 4 cars away. 3. Then get ready to run. 2 cars away. Then a soft recorded voice. "Mind the closing doors, please." "Hold the train," the wight shouted, but the doors were already closing. He stuck an arm through. The doors bounced open again. He got on board, into the car next to ours. My eyes went to the door that connected our cars. It was locked with a chain. Thank God for small mercies. The door snicked shut and the train began to move. We shifted the folding man onto the floor and huddled with him in a spot where we couldn't be seen from the wight's car. "What can we do?" said Emma. "The moment this train stops again, he'll come straight in here and find us." "Are we absolutely certain he's a wight?" asked Addison. "Do cats grow on trees?" Emma replied. "Not in this part of the world." "Then of course we aren't. But when it comes to wights, there's an old saying. If you're not sure, assume." "Okay then," I said. "The second those doors open, we run for the exit." Addison sighed. "All this fleeing," he said disdainfully, as if he were a gourmand and someone had offered him a limp square of American cheese. "There's no imagination in it. Mightn't we try sneaking, blending in? There's artistry in that. Then we could simply walk away, gracefully, unnoticed." "I hate fleeing as much as anyone," I said. "But Emma and I look like 19th century axe murderers, and you're a dog who wears glasses. We're bound to be noticed." "Until they start manufacturing canine contact lenses, I'm stuck with these," Addison grumbled. "Where's that hollow gas when you need him?" said Emma offhandedly. "Run over by a train if we're lucky," I said. "And what do you mean by that?" "Only that he came in quite handy earlier. And before that, he nearly killed us. Twice. No, 3 times. Whatever it is I've been doing to control it has been half by accident, and the moment I'm not able to, we're dead." Emma didn't respond right away, but studied me for a moment and then took my hand, all caked in grime, and kissed it gently. Once, twice. "What was that for?" I said, surprised. "You have no idea, do you?" "Of what?" "How completely miraculous you are." Addison groaned. "You have an amazing talent," Emma whispered. "I'm certain all you need is a little practice." "Maybe, but practicing something usually means failing at it for a while, and failing at this means people get killed." Emma squeezed my hand. "Well, there's nothing like a little pressure to help you hone a new skill." I tried to smile but couldn't muster one. My heart hurt too much at the thought of all the damage I could cause. This thing I could do felt like a loaded weapon I didn't know how to use. Hell, I didn't even know which end to point away from me. Better to set it down than have it blow up in my hands. We heard a noise at the other end of the car and looked up to see the door opening. That one wasn't chained, and now a pair of leather-clad teenagers stumbled into our car, a boy and a girl, laughing and passing a lit cigarette between them. "We'll get in trouble," the girl said, kissing his neck. The boy brushed a foppish wave of hair from his eyes. "I do this all the time, sweetheart." Then saw us and froze, his eyebrows parabolic. The door they'd come through banged closed behind them. "Hey," I said casually, as if we weren't crouched on the floor with a dying man covered in blood. "What's up?" "Don't freak out. Don't give us away." The boy wrinkled his brow. "Are you—" "In costume," I replied. "Got carried away with the fake blood." "Oh," said the boy, clearly not believing me. The girl stared at the folding man. "Is he—" "Drunk," Emma said, "soused out of his brain. Which is how we came to spill all of our fake blood on the floor. And himself." "And us," said Addison. The teen's heads snapped toward him, their eyes going wider still. "You goon," Emma muttered. "Keep quiet." The boy raised a trembling hand and pointed at the dog. "Did he just—" Addison had only said 2 words. We might have played it off as a trick of echoes, something other than what it seemed, but he was too proud to play dumb. "Of course I didn't," he said, raising his nose in the air. "Dogs can't speak English, nor any human language, save in one notable exception, Luxembourgish, which is only comprehensible to bankers and Luxembourgers, and therefore hardly of any use at all. No, you've eaten something disagreeable and are having a nightmare, that's all. Now, if you wouldn't mind terribly, my friends need to borrow your clothes. Please disrobe at once." Pallid and shaking, the boy started to remove his leather jacket, but he'd only wriggled one arm free when his knees gave out and he fainted to the floor. And then the girl began to scream, and she didn't stop. In an instant, the wight was banging at the chained door, his blank eyes flashing murder. "So much for sneaking away," I said. Addison turned to look at him. "Definitely a wight," he said, nodding sagely. "I'm so glad we put that mystery to rest," said Emma. There was a jolt and a squeal of brakes. We were coming into a station. I pulled Emma to her feet and prepared to run. "What about Sergei?" Emma said, whipping around to look back at him. It would be hard enough to outrun a pair of wights with Emma still recovering her strength. With the folding man in my arms, it would be impossible. "We'll have to leave him," I said. "He'll be found and brought to a doctor. It's his best chance. And ours." Surprisingly, she agreed. "I think it's what he'd want." She went quickly to his side. "I'm sorry we can't take you with us, but I'm certain we'll meet again." "In the next world," he croaked, his eyes slitting open. "In Abaton." With those mysterious words and the girl's screams ringing in our ears, the train came to a stop and the doors opened. We weren't clever. We weren't graceful. The moment the train doors slid open, we just ran as fast as we could. The wight leapt out of his car and into ours, by which time we had dashed past the screaming girl, over the fainted boy, and onto the platform, where we struggled against a crowd that was streaming onto the train like a school of spawning fish. This station, unlike all the others, was heaving at the seams. "There!" I shouted, pulling Emma toward a way out sign that glowed in the distance. I hoped Addison was somewhere at our feet, but so many people were flooding around us that I could hardly see the floor. Luckily, Emma's strength was returning, or a rush of adrenaline was kicking in, because I don't think I could have supported her weight and threaded the human stampede, too. We'd put about 20 feet and 50 people between us and the train when the wight burst out of it, shoving commuters and yelling, "I am an officer of the law," and "Get out of my way," and "Stop those children." Either no one could hear him over the echoing din of the station, or no one was paying attention. I looked back to see him gaining, and that's when Emma started tripping people, sweeping her legs left and right as we ran. People shouted and fell into tangles behind us, and when I looked back again, the wight was struggling, stepping on legs and backs and getting swats with umbrellas and briefcases in return. Then he stopped, red-faced and frustrated, to unsnap his gun holster. But the gulf of people between us had yawned too wide now, and though I was sure he'd be heartless enough to fire into a crowd, he wasn't stupid enough to. The ensuing panic would have made us even more difficult to catch. The third time I looked back, he was so far behind and swallowed by the crowd that I could hardly see him. Maybe he didn't really care whether he caught us. After all, we were neither a great threat nor much of a prize. Maybe the dog had been right. Compared to an ymbryne, we were hardly worth the trouble. Halfway to the exits, the crowd thinned enough for us to break into an open run. But we'd taken only a few strides when Emma caught me by the sleeve and stopped me. "Addison," she cried, spinning to look around. "Where's Addison?" A moment later, he came scampering out of the thickest part of the crowd, a long piece of white fabric trailing from a spike on his collar. "You waited for me," he said. "I became entangled in a lady's stocking." Heads turned at the sound of his voice. "Come on, we can't stop now," I said. Emma plucked the stocking from Addison's collar, and we were off and running again. Before us were an escalator and an elevator. The escalator was working but very crowded, so I steered us toward the elevator instead. We ran past a lady painted blue from head to toe, and I had to turn and stare even as my legs carried me onward. Her hair was dyed blue, her face caked with blue makeup, and she wore a skin-tight jumpsuit, also blue. She'd only just passed out of sight when I saw someone even more freakish, a man whose head was divided vertically into halves, one bald and burnt to a crisp, the other untouched, hair mussed into a dapper wave. If Emma noticed him, she didn't turn to look. Maybe she was so used to meeting genuine peculiars that peculiar-looking normals hardly registered. But what if they aren't normal, I thought. What if they're peculiars, and instead of the present, we've ended up in some new loop? What if... Then I saw two boys with glowing swords battling by a wall of vending machines, each saber clash-sounding with a thin, plasticky thwack, and reality came into sharp focus. These strange-looking people weren't peculiars. They were nerds. We were very much in the present. 20 feet away, the elevator doors opened. We poured on the speed and hurled ourselves inside, bouncing off the back wall with our hands, while Addison tumbled in on tripping legs. I turned just in time to glimpse two things through the closing doors. The wight breaking out of the crowd and coming at us in full run, and back by the tracks where the train was pulling away, the hollow gas leaping from the roof of the last car to the station ceiling, swinging like a spider from a light fixture by its tongues, its black eyes burning at me. And then the doors closed, and we were gliding gently upward, and someone was saying, "Where's the fire, mate?" A middle-aged man stood in the rear corner of the elevator, costumed and sneering. His shirt was torn, his face was cross-hatched with fake cuts, and strapped to the end of one arm, Captain Hook style, was a blood-stained chainsaw. Emma saw him and took a quick step back. "Who are you?" He looked mildly offended. "Oh, come on. If you really want to know where the fire is, don't answer." She began to raise her hands, but I reached over and stopped her. "He's no one," I said. "I thought I was making such an obvious choice this year," the man muttered. He arched an eyebrow and raised his chainsaw a little. "Name's Ash. Army of Darkness? Never heard of either, said Emma. Who's your ymbryne? My what? He's just doing a character, I tried to explain, but she wasn't hearing me. Never mind who you are, she said. We could use an army, and beggars can't be choosers. Where are the rest of your men? The man rolled his eyes. LOL, you guys are funny. Everyone's in the convention center, obviously. He's wearing a costume, I whispered to Emma, then to the guy. She doesn't see a lot of movies. A costume? Emma scrunched her brow. But he's a grown man. So what? The man said, looking us up and down. And who are you supposed to be? Walking dorks, lead of extraordinary dingleberries? Peculiar children, said Addison, whose ego wouldn't allow him to be silent any longer. And I am the seventh pup of the seventh pup in a long and illustrious line of... The man fainted before Addison could finish, his head knocking against the floor with a clonk that made me wince. You've got to stop doing that, Emma said, then grinned despite herself. Serves him right, said Addison. What a rude person. Now quick, nick his wallet. No way, I said. We're not thieves. Addison snorted. I dare say we need it more than he does. Why on earth is he dressed like that? Said Emma. The elevator dinged and the doors began to slide open. I think you're about to find out, I said. The elevator doors split open, and like magic, the daylit world spread before us. So bright we had to shield our eyes. I drew a welcome lungful of fresh air as we stepped out onto a swarming sidewalk. There were costumed people everywhere. Superheroes in spandex, zombies shambling in heavy makeup, raccoon-eyed anime girls wielding battle axes. They congregated in unlikely bunches and spilled into a street blocked off to traffic, drawn like moths to a large gray building where a banner proclaimed, Comic Convention Today. Emma recoiled toward the elevator. What is all this? Addison peered over his glasses at a green-haired joker touching up his face paint. Judging by their attire, it appears to be some sort of religious holiday. Something like that, I said, coaxing Emma back onto the sidewalk. But don't be scared. They're only dressed up normals, and that's what we look like to them, too. We only need to worry about that wight. I failed to mention the hollow, hoping we'd baffled it by vanishing into the elevator. We should find a place to hide until he's gone, then sneak back into the underground. No need for that, Addison said, and he trotted into the crowded street, nose twitching. Hey, Emma called after him. Where are you going? But he was already circling back. Huzzah, for fortune, he said, wagging his stubby tail. My nose tell us our friends were brought out of the underground here, via that escalator. We've gone the right way after all. Thank the birds, Emma said. Do you think you can follow their trail? I asked. Do I think I can? They don't call me Addison the Astounding for nothing. Why, there isn't an aroma, a redolence, a peculiar eau de toilette I can't nose from 100 meters. Addison was easily distracted by the topic of his own greatness, even when pressing matters were at hand, and his proud, booming voice had a tendency to carry. Okay, we get it, I said, but he steamrolled on, walking now, following his nose. I could find a peculiar in a hollow stack, an ymbryne in an aviary. We chased him into the costumed crowd, between the legs of a dwarf on stilts, around a pack of undead princesses, and on a near collision course with a Pikachu and an Edward Scissorhands, who were waltzing in the street. Of course our friends were brought this way, I thought. It was perfect camouflage, not only for us, who amidst all this look downright normal, but also for wights, abducting a herd of peculiar children. Even if some of them had dared cry out for help, who would have taken them seriously enough to intervene? People were play acting all around us, improvising staged fights, growling in monstrous costumes, moaning like zombies. Some strange kids yelling about being kidnapped by people who wanted to steal their souls. Wouldn't raise an eyebrow. Addison walked a circle sniffing the ground, then sat down, perplexed. Subtly, because even in this crowd a talking dog would be shocking, I bent down and asked him what was the matter. It's just, he stammered, that I seem to have lost the trail, Emma said. I thought your nose was infallible. I've merely mislaid the trail, but I don't understand how. It leads quite clearly to this spot, then vanishes. Tie your shoes, Emma said suddenly. Now. I looked down at them, but they're not. She grabbed my forearm and yanked me down. Tie your shoes, she repeated, then mouthed, white. We knelt there, hidden below the heads of loose-knit crowd. Then came a burst of loud static and a strained voice through a walkie-talkie. Code 141. All crews repeat to the acre immediately. The white was close. We heard him reply in a gruff, oddly accented voice. This is M. I'm tracking the escapees. Request permission to continue searching. Over. I exchanged a tense look with Emma. Denied. M cleaners will sweep the area later. Over. The boy seems to have some influence over the cleaners. Sweep may not be effective. Cleaners. He must have been talking about the hollows, and he was definitely talking about me. Denied, said the crackling voice. Report back immediately or you'll spend tonight in the pit. Over. The white muttered, acknowledged, into his walkie-talkie and stalked away. We've got to follow him, Emma said. He could lead us to the others. And straight into the lion's den, Addison said. Though I don't suppose that can't be helped. I was still reeling. They know who I am, I said faintly. They must have seen what I did. That's right, Emma said, and it scared the stuffing out of them. I unbent myself to watch the white go. He marched through the crowd, hopped a traffic barricade, and jogged away toward a parked police car. We followed him as far as the traffic barrier. I looked around, trying to imagine the kidnapper's next move. Behind us was the crowd, and in front, beyond the traffic barrier, cars prowled the block for parking. Maybe our friends came this far on foot, I said, then were put into a car. Brightening, Addison stood on hind legs to peek over the traffic barrier. Yes, that must be it. Bright boy. What are you so cheerful for? Said Emma. If they were taken away in a car, they could be anywhere by now. Then we'll follow them anywhere, Addison said pointedly, though I doubt they're terribly far. My old master had a townhouse not far from here, and I know this part of the city well. There are no major ports nor obvious points of exit from London nearby, but there are a few loop entrances. It's much more likely that they've been taken to one of those. Now lift me up. I did, and with my help he scrambled over the barrier and began to sniff around the other side. Within seconds, he'd found our friend's scent trail again. This way, he said, pointing down the street after the white, who'd gotten into the police car and was driving away. Looks like we're in for a walk, I said to Emma. Think you can make it? I'll manage, she said, so long as we find another loop within a few hours. Otherwise, I may start sprouting gray hairs and crow's feet. She smiled as if this were something to joke about. I won't let that happen, I said. We jumped the barricade. I took one last look at the underground station behind us. Do you see the hollow? Said Emma. No, I don't know where it is, and that worries me. Let's worry about one thing at a time, she said. We walked as fast as Emma could manage, keeping to the side of the street, still sunk in morning shadow, watching for police and following Addison's nose. We passed into an industrial area near the docks, the River Thames revealing itself darkly between the gaps in warehouses. Then into a fancy shopping district where glittering stores were crowned with glassy townhouses. Over their roofs, I caught glimpses of the dome of St. Paul's Cathedral, whole again, the sky around it clear and blue. The bombs had all been dropped, and the bombers were long gone, shot down, scrapped, retired into museums where they gathered dust behind ropes to be gawked at by schoolchildren for whom that war seemed as distant as the Crusades. To me, it was, quite literally, yesterday. Hard to believe these were the same cratered, blacked-out streets through which we'd run our lives only last night. They were unrecognizable now, shopping malls seemingly conjured from the ashes, and so were the people who walked them, heads down, glued to phones, clothed in logos. The present seemed suddenly strange to me, so trivial and distracted. I felt like one of those mythical heroes who fights his way back from the underworld only to realize that the world above is every bit as damned as the one below. And then it hit me. I was back. I was in the present again, and I'd crossed into it without the intervention of Miss Peregrine, which was supposed to be impossible. "Emma," I said, "how did I get here?" She kept her eyes trained on the street ahead, always scanning for trouble. "Where? London? On a train, silly." "No." I lowered my voice. "I mean, to now. You said Miss Peregrine was the only one who could send me back." She turned to glance at me, eyes narrowing. "Yes," she said slowly. "She was." "Or so you thought." "No, she was. I'm sure of it. That's how it works." "Then how did I get here?" She looked lost. "I don't know, Jacob. Maybe—" "There," Addison said excitedly, and we broke off, wondering where to look. His body was rigid, pointing down the street we just turned onto. "I'm picking up dozens of peculiar scent trails now, dozens upon dozens, and they're fresh." "Which means what?" I said. "Other kidnapped peculiars were brought this way, not just our friends," said Emma. "The Wights' hideout must be close by." "Close by here?" I said. The block was lined with fast food joints and tacky souvenir shops, and we stood framed in the neon-lit window of a greasy diner. "I guess I'd just been imagining someplace eviler?" "Like a dungeon in some dank castle," Emma said, nodding. "Or a concentration camp surrounded by guards and barbed wire fences," I said. "In the snow, like Horace's drawing." "We may find such a place yet," said Addison. "Remember, this is likely just the entrance to a loop." Across the street, tourists were taking pictures of themselves in front of one of the city's iconic red phone boxes. Then they noticed us and snapped a picture in our direction. "Hey," Emma said, "no photos." People were beginning to stare. No longer surrounded by comic conventioneers, we stuck out like sore, bloody thumbs. "Follow me," Addison hissed. "All the trails lead this way." We hurried after him down the block. "If only Millard were here," I said. "He could scout this place without being noticed." "Or if Horace were here, he might remember a dream that would help us," Emma said. "Or find us new clothes," I said. "If we don't stop, I'll cry," Emma said. We came to a jetty bustling with activity. Sun glinted off the water, a narrow inlet of the murky Thames, and clumps of tourists in visors and fanny packs waddled onto and off of several large boats, each offering more or less identical sightseeing tours of London. Addison stopped. "They were brought here," he said. "It would appear they were put onto a boat." We followed his nose through the crowd to an empty boat slip. The Wights had indeed loaded our friends onto a boat, and now we needed to follow them. But in what? We walked around the jetty looking for a ride. "This will never do," Emma grumbled. "These boats are too large and crowded. We need a small one, something we can pilot ourselves." "Wait a moment," said Addison, his snout twitching. He trotted away, nose to the wooden boards. We followed him across the jetty and down a little unmarked ramp that was ignored by the tourists. It led to a lower dock below the street, just at water level. There was no one around. It was deserted. Here Addison stopped, wearing a look of deep concentration. "Peculiars have come this way." "Our peculiars?" Emma said. He sniffed the dock again and shook his head. "Not ours, but there are many trails here, new and old, strong and faded, all mixed together. This is an oft-used pathway." Ahead of us, the dock narrowed and disappeared beneath the main jetty, where it was swallowed in shadows. "Oft used by whom?" Emma said, peering anxiously into the dark. "I've never heard of any loop entrance underneath a dock in Wapping." Addison had no answer. There was nothing to do but forge on and explore, so we did, passing nervously into the shadows. As our eyes adjusted, another jetty resolved into view, one altogether different from the sunny, pleasant one above us. The boards down here were green and rotting, broken in places. A scrum of squeaking rats scampered through a mound of discarded cans, then leapt a short distance from the dock into an ancient-looking skiff, bobbing in the dark water between wooden pylons slimed with moss. "Well," Emma said, "I guess that would do in a pinch." "But it's filled with rats," said Addison, aghast. "It won't be for long," Emma said, igniting a small flame in her hand. "Rats don't much care for my company." Since there didn't seem to be anyone to stop us, we crossed to the boat, hopscotching around the weakest-looking boards, and began to untie it from the dock. "Stop!" came a booming voice from inside the boat. Emma squealed, Addison yelped, and I nearly leapt out of my skin. A man who'd been sitting in the boat. How had we not seen him until now? I rose slowly to his feet, straightening himself inch by inch until he towered over us. He was 7 feet tall at least, his massive frame draped in a cloak and his face hidden beneath a dark hood. I'm so sorry," Emma stammered. We thought this boat was..." "Many have tried to steal from Sharon," the man thundered. "Now their skulls make homes for the sea creatures." "I swear we weren't trying to..." "We'll just be going," squeaked Addison, backing away. "So sorry to bother you, my lord." "Silence!" the boatman roared, stepping onto the creaking dock with one enormous stride. "Anyone who comes for my boat must pay the price." I was completely terrified, and when Emma shouted, "Run," I was already turning to go. We'd only gotten a few paces, though, when my foot crashed through a rotting board, and I pitched face first onto the dock. I tried to scramble up, but my leg was thigh-deep in the hole. I was stuck, and by the time Emma and Addison circled back to help me, it was too late. The boatman was upon us, looming overhead and laughing, his cavernous guffaws booming around us. It might have been a trick of the darkness, but I could have sworn I saw a rat tumble from the hood of his cloak, and another slip from his sleeve as he slowly raised his arm towards us. "Get away from us, you maniac!" Emma shouted, clapping her hands to light a flame. Though the light she made did nothing to chase away the dark inside the boatman's hood, I suspected not even the sun could do that. It showed us what he held in his outstretched hand, which wasn't a knife nor any weapon. It was a piece of paper, pinched between his thumb and a long white forefinger. He was offering it to me, bending low so I could reach it. "Please," he said calmly. "Read it." I hesitated. What is it? The price, and some other information regarding my services. Quaking with fear, I reached up and took the paper. We all leaned in to read by the light of Emma's flame. It's the destination, not the journey. Sharon's River Tours, offering day trips and romantic sunset cruises since 1693. Price, 1 gold piece. Discretion guaranteed. Ask about our specials. I looked up at the giant boatman. So this is you? I said uncertainly. You're Sharon. In the flesh, he replied, his voice an oily slither that made my neck hairs stand on end. Good bird, man, you scared us half to death, said Addison. Was all that bluster and cackling really necessary? My apologies. I was napping and you startled me. We startled you. For a moment, I thought you really were trying to steal my boat, he chuckled. Ha, ha, Emma said, forcing a laugh. No, we were just making sure it was moored properly. Sharon turned to examine the skiff, which was simply roped to one of the wooden pylons. And how do you find it? He asked, the dull white crescent of a grin spreading beneath his hood. Totally ship shape, I said, finally jimmying my leg free from the hole. Really good, mooring. Couldn't have tied a better knot myself, said Emma, helping me to my feet. By the way, said Addison, the ones who did try, are they really all... He glanced at the dark water and swallowed audibly. Never mind that, the boatman said. Now you've woken me and I am at your service. What can I do for you? We need to hire your boat, Emma said firmly. By ourselves. I can't allow that, Sharon said. I always captain the boat. Ah, too bad then, Addison said, turning eagerly to leave. Emma caught him by the collar. Wait, she hissed. We're not done here. She smiled pleasantly at the boatman. So, we happen to know that a lot of peculiars come through this... She looked around, searching for the right word. Place? Is that because there's a loop entrance nearby? I don't know what you mean, Sharon said flatly. Okay, yes, of course you can't just admit it. I completely understand. But you're in safe company with us. Obviously we're... I elbowed her. Emma, don't. Why not? He's already seen the dog talk and me make fire. If we can't speak honestly. But we don't know if he is, I said. Of course he is, she said. Then turned to Sharon. You are, aren't you? The boatman stared at us impassively. He is, isn't he? Emma asked Addison. Can't you smell it on him? No, not clearly. Well, I suppose it doesn't matter so long as he's not a wight. She gave Sharon a beady-eyed glare. You're not, are you? I'm a businessman, he said evenly. Who's well accustomed to meeting talking dogs and girls who make fire with their hands? Said Addison. In my line of work, one meets a wide variety of people. I'll cut to the chase, I said, shaking water off one foot, then the other. We're looking for some friends of ours. We think they might have come this way within the last hour or so. Mostly kids, some adults. One was invisible, one could float. They're hard to miss, Emma said. They were being held at gunpoint by a gang of wights. Sharon crossed his arms into a wide black X. As I said, all manner of people hire my boat, and each relies on my absolute discretion. I won't discuss my clientele. Is that so? Emma said. Excuse us just a moment. She took me aside to whisper in my ear. If he doesn't start talking, I'm going to get really angry. Don't do anything reckless, I whispered back. Why, you believe that humbug about skulls and sea creatures? Yes, actually. I know he's a slime bag, but... Slime bag? He's practically admitted to doing business with wights. He might even be one. But he's a useful slime bag. I have a feeling he knows exactly where our friends were taken. It's just a matter of asking the right questions. Then have at it, she said crossly. I turned to Sharon and said with a smile, What can you tell me about your tours? He brightened immediately. Finally, a subject I can speak freely about. I just happen to have some information right here. He turned snappily and went to a nearby pylon. A shelf had been nailed onto it, and upon the shelf was displayed a skull dressed in old-time aviator garb, leather cap, goggles, a jaunty scarf. Gripped between its teeth were several pamphlets, and Sharon pulled one out and handed it to me. It was a cheesy tourist brochure that looked like it had been printed when my grandfather was a boy. I leafed through its pages as Sharon cleared his throat and spoke. Let's see now. Families enjoy the Famine and Flames package. In the morning, we go upriver to watch Viking siege engines catapult diseased sheep over the city walls, then have a nice box lunch, and return in the evening via the Great Fire of 1666, which is a real treat after dark, with the flames reflecting on the water, very nice. Or, if you've only a few hours to spare, we have a lovely gibbeting round execution dock right at sunset, popular with honeymooners, in which some excellently foul-tongued pirates give colorful speeches before being put to the rope. For a small fee, you can even have your photo taken with them. Inside the brochure were illustrations of smiling tourists enjoying the sights he described. The final page was a photo of one of Sharon's guests posing with a gang of Shirley pirates wielding knives and guns. Peculiars do this stuff for fun? I marveled. This is a waste of time, Emma whispered, checking behind us anxiously. I'll bet he's just running out the clock until the next patrol of wights arrives. I don't think so, I said. Just wait. Sharon was plowing on as if he hadn't heard us. And you can see all the lunatics' heads arranged on pikes as we float beneath London Bridge. Lastly, there's our most requested excursion, which is a personal favorite of mine. But, oh, never mind, he said coyly, waving his hand. Come to think of it, I doubt you'd be interested in Devil's Acre. Why not? Emma said. Too nice and pleasant. Actually, it's rather a rough spot. Certainly no place for children. Emma stamped her foot and shook the whole rotting dock. That's where our friends were taken, isn't it? She shouted. Isn't it? Don't lose your temper, miss. Your safety is my highest concern. Quit winding us up and tell us what's there. Well, if you insist. Sharon made a sound like he was slipping into a warm bath and began rubbing his leathery hands together, as if just thinking about it brought him pleasure. Nasty things, he said. Dreadful things. Vile things. Anything you like, so long as what you like is nasty, dreadful, and vile. I've often dreamed of hanging up my oar pole and retiring there one day, perhaps to run the little abattoir on Oozing Street. What name did you call it again? Said Addison. Devil's Acre, the boatman said wistfully. Addison shuddered from tip to tail. I know it, he said gravely. It's a terrible place, the most depraved and dangerous slum in the whole long history of London. I've heard stories of peculiar animals brought there in cages and made to fight in blood sport games. Grim bears pitted against emu rafts, chimpanoceri against flaming goats, parents against their own children, forced to maim and kill one another for the entertainment of a few sick peculiars. Disgusting, Emma said. What peculiar would participate in such a thing? Addison shook his head ruefully. Outlaws, mercenaries, exiles. But there are no outlaws in peculiardom, said Emma. Any peculiar convicted of a crime is brought by the home guard to a punishment loop. How little you know of our world, the boatman said. Criminals can't be jailed if they're never caught, Addison explained. Not if they escape to a loop like that first. Lawless, ungovernable. It sounds like hell, I said. Why would anyone go there voluntarily? What's hell for some, said the boatman, is paradise for others. It's the last truly free place. Somewhere you can buy anything, sell anything. He leaned toward me and lowered his voice. Or hide anything. Like kidnapped ymbrynes and peculiar children, I said. Is that what you're getting at? I said nothing of the sort, shrugged the boatman, busying himself with a rat plucked from the hem of his cloak. Shoo there, Percy. Daddy's working. While he placed the rat gently inside, I gathered Emma and Addison in a tight huddle. What do you think? I whispered. Could this devil place really be where our friends were taken? Well, they have to be keeping their prisoners inside a loop, and a pretty old one, said Emma. Otherwise, most of us would age forward and die after a day or two. But what do the wights care if we die? I said. They just want to steal our souls. Maybe, but they can't let the ymbrynes die. They need them to recreate the 1908 event. Remember the wights' crazy plan? All that stuff Golan was raving about? Immortality and ruling the world? Yeah, so they've been kidnapping ymbrynes for months and need a place to hold them where they won't turn into dried fruit leather, right? Which means a pretty old loop. 80, 100 years at least. And if Devil's Acre is really a lawless jungle of depravity, it is, said Addison. Then it sounds like a perfect spot for wights to secret away their captives. Right in the heart of peculiar London, too, said Addison. Right under everyone's noses. Clever little blighters. Guess that settles it, I said. Emma stepped smartly toward Sharon. We'll take 3 tickets to that disgusting, horrible place you described, please. Be very, very certain that's what you want, said the boatman. Innocent lambs like yourselves don't always return from Devil's Acre. We're sure, I said. Very good then, but don't say I didn't warn you. Only thing is, we don't have 3 gold pieces, said Emma. Is that right? Sharon tented his long fingers and let out a sigh that smelled like an open tomb. Normally, I insist upon payment up front, but I'm feeling generous this morning. I find your plucky optimism charming. You can owe me. And then he laughed as if he knew we'd never live to repay him, and stepping aside, he raised a cloaked arm toward his boat. Welcome aboard, children. End of chapter 1.